Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Osterhout, the executive producer here at Lincoln Square, and I'm joined every week by and with Andra Watkins. As this is getting off on the wrong start, it's because I'm so flustered because of Battleground, what we're going to talk about today. Andra, from For Such a Time as This on Substack, how are you?
I have a cold today, and everybody's going to get to listen to that for the next 30 minutes or so. But otherwise, I'm fine.
Well, you sound good. I mean, you don't sound bad yet. Hopefully, it's on the way out, but it doesn't sound like it.
Maybe I sound a little deeper, and that usually sounds better in these contexts. So,
Yeah, yes, more authoritative and serious. Yeah. Well, what we have to talk about today is wild, and you have been writing about this all week. And these episodes of Unholy Ground, for everyone who's just joining us on this journey, welcome. For all of you who have been coming back every week, welcome back. As you know, we essentially base these conversations on the writing that you do each week, because it is so in-depth and so remarkable that it makes me like, I'm a curious person in general, but this gives me, all of it just gives me kind of tingles like, oh, what is actually happening here? And there are a lot of dots that we need to connect. And today we're going to connect the white Christian nationalist takeover of a town to Chick-fil-A circa 2012. Okay. We'll get there, I promise. But I want to start in Washington State. There was a town in Washington, and it's called Battleground, of all names. It's right on the Oregon border. And a while back, a billionaire quietly started buying buildings. He bought more than 30 properties. Now, the pastor he's building a church for preaches about what he says governing unbelievers. Mm-hmm. Right. And this is, look, I think I always come up with new titles for this show, but this could be the title, why white Christian nationalists want to govern unbelievers. And whether or not you're Christian, you to them are an unbeliever. So at the same time, about an hour and a half outside of Nashville, a couple of podcasters announced that they're moving to a county of 12,000 to build a town and take over the local Republican Party. So these are different states, and it's a slightly different but similar playbook. And this is happening all over the United States. Christian nationalists are coming into towns and trying to take them over. And if they can't, they're building their own. So I want to start in Battleground. Just set the scene for us. Tell us about Battleground.
Battleground, thankfully, has made national news by now. I think a lot of people are following it. It's a tiny town of 23,000 people, about 30 minutes from Portland, Oregon. So you've got super progressive Portland. And then across the Columbia River in Washington State, you've got this rural community. Tanya Harding, this former figure skater, actually lives in Battleground.
And she's like a landscaper now, right?
Yeah. So, anyway, this happened over the course of more than a decade, really. I mean, a guy from Greenville, South Carolina, started this company called Maddox Industrial Transformer that provides transformers and electrical support to, guess what, surveillance data centers.
Oh my God.
So he's a billionaire.
I didn't even get to that part. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. He's a billionaire from that. And so in 2018, he targeted Battleground as a place to open his headquarters nationally. So he moved there, started employing people. It was a depressed community, lots of empty buildings, lots of people moving out of the community to other places. So he ingratiates himself in the community. He supports community initiatives. And then in 2020, he quietly starts buying up empty properties on Main Street and around town. Not that many at first. He didn't do enough to attract attention to anything. In 2023, I believe he was instrumental though there's no proof of this, in bringing a white Christian nationalist pastor. He actually wasn't a pastor. He was a professor in Boston before he moved to Battleground to become a pastor at a evangelical Presbyterian church. And they started working together in 2025. They dramatically accelerated his buying of properties. And so it drew attention at that point because of how many he was buying.
Right.
And he's trying, 3 or more of his employees at Maddox Industrial Transformer are now the mayor and the assistant city council person. And they just took office at the beginning of the year. So this has been an almost decade-long job by this billionaire and his sidekick, this Presbyterian minister, to transform the town of Battleground into a white Christian nationalist community. It's causing a lot of unrest in the town because there are long-term residents who are going, what are we doing? I've lived here for 35 years. My family's been here for 150 years. You know, what are we doing here? And so I have readers all over the country. And one of my readers reported on the last city council meeting for me. And that's what I covered this week.
And that is a real flashpoint here, right? Because it's, you know, look, a lot of depressed towns. I live in upstate New York. IBM was here for a long time, and then it just left. And, you know, towns often, especially in outside of metro areas, put all their eggs in one corporate basket. They try to attract the big, you know, the big employer that's going to come and solve all their problems. And it does briefly, and then it doesn't. When it doesn't, you're left, you know, with crimes of despair and illness of despair and joblessness and, you know, dilapidation and hopelessness and all of these things. And it's a prime opportunity for another person to come in, like a billionaire, buy shit up and say they're going to turn everything around. And it starts to feel a little gross when you realize what's really happening. So talk about that town hall meeting.
So there were 200 people at the meeting, which in a town of that size they couldn't fit any more people in the room. There were 80 some people outside protesting. And they had multiple things on the agenda that were proclamations signed by the mayor that weren't approved by city council, didn't have to be approved by anybody. They were just signed by the mayor for the town. And 2 of the 3 were honoring ICE and supporting ICE and the rule of law and declaring Antifa a terrorist organization. And
because Battleground, you know, the nation's eyes look to Battleground for their take on Antifa.
So, you know, the people there largely were opposed to these 2 proclamations and wanted to have them stricken from the record. But the white Christian nationalist mayor said, no, these are done at my discretion and we're not striking them from the record and we're not discussing them and we're not voting on them and we're not having any talk about it at all.
Right.
And if you get disruptive, if you make faces, if you roll your eyes, if you know, have jazz hands, if you get unruly, you're going to be escorted out of the room. So somebody asked nicely if they could talk about, you know, say a couple of things on the record before, and he let them, but then cut them off and said, no more rolling eyes, no more discussion. This is a done deal. End of it. So at the end of the meeting, they let people talk. Over 60 people spoke. Most of them said they were Christians. 43 of them spoke against these proclamations. Only 19 people spoke for them. The next proclamation that the mayor has put up is nuclear family declaration, which, you know, we've covered that here already.
Cover it again. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's important to know what these towns are actually doing. Well,
the state of Tennessee passed a nuclear family declaration for the month of June to replace Pride Month with Nuclear Family Month, which recognized the God-ordained plan for a family of one man married to one unrelated woman with as many children as God gives them, following God's plan. So, it's standard language that came out of the Heritage Foundation, Saving America by Saving the Family, which we've also covered here. The Heritage Foundation is writing these things and sending them around. So the mayor of Battleground wants the next proclamation that he signs to be that they have a nuclear family recognition and designation. So that's the next thing on the agenda. One person was arrested at the meeting for brandishing an Antifa flag and screaming and cursing at people. And, one man who'd lived there 35 years testified that, I've been here 35 years and people are spitting on me in public and telling me to go back where I came from. And, I wanted to highlight that in my piece and here, because go back where you came from becomes a bigger and bigger thing. It goes from immigrants to people who live here who don't get with the program, whatever the color of their skin or their nationality, their ethnicity. And so that's another thing that's been happening there. You're either going to go along with this white Christian nationalist takeover or you can get out, is basically what people are being told.
I think that's a really important point, and we're going to get more to that towards the end, because this is the snowball, right? And this is why we do this show. This is why you have your Substack, because the snowball is already formed. Everyone, it's already happening. It's already rolling down the mountain, and we get to determine how much speed it picks up and how much volume and all of that, but we have to keep our eye on it. You have to watch it. So we talk about this a lot. I mean, this is the thing that kind of excited me about, excited is a weird word, but about the writing this week is this is the distillation of all of the attempts. Every time I'm like, wait a second. So they want to do this, but how does that look in practice? And also why? Like, why do they want to do this? How are they going to do it? What will it look like in our everyday lives? This is that. This is the distillation of all of that. This is how it will affect your life. If you live in New York City, maybe you're fine, for now, but you're not fine.
In rural New York, you're not.
In rural New York, you're not. And also because this is a snowball. A snowball covers all of it. So I want to talk, there's a couple of other strategies, but I also want to talk about this guy, which you wrote about today. Everyone, we're taping on Thursday, by the way. This is a city or a sort of planned community in Tennessee.
So this is in Jackson County, Tennessee. I wrote about this at the beginning of last year because Phil Williams, who's an investigative journalist in Nashville, started covering it. So some people have been talking about this place for a lot longer than the BBC.
Yeah, because it's been in the works for a while.
Yeah, and so this is a planned community that is sponsored by a venture capital group out of Dallas, Texas. So this is a different model than Battleground. Yes. Battleground is a billionaire, brings his business to the community and transforms the community. This is a group of venture capitalists buy up acreage in a rural area and want to make a planned conservative Christian community. And so part of this transformation of bringing these people into this community, having a bunch of Christian nationalists converge in this area where they can live as Christian nationalists, have their homeschools and their Christian churches and their Christian businesses and all of that, is that they would ultimately take over the government of Jackson County, where this community is. But this plan is one that this venture capital firm, it's called the Highland Ridge Project. And so they want to do these developments all across Appalachia. So they are targeting areas that are depressed, that have cheap land, that have, buildings that are probably already built that could just be bought for next to nothing and renovated.
Yep.
And, and nobody's paying attention. that's the other thing. A lot of the people on the ground in these communities are probably not very engaged politically. They've got too many other things to worry about. And so these people come in and dangle, here, I'll buy your land. Here, we'll start a business. Here, we'll fund your starting a business if you do it this way, the way we say, the Christian nationalist way, etc. So this is another model that you can look for, especially if you're in a rural area, of an outside venture capital firm coming. The guy that's featured in the BBC article is not from the area. They hired him and bring him to the area to infiltrate the area and form the right connections and whatever.
Looks like a regular nice guy.
Well,
Good
if you
boy.
read a whole lot of what he says, you won't think that.
No,
but
sure.
he is the type, and they pick that type specifically because that's what will fit in that area.
Mm-hmm.
That's what can assimilate quickly. That's what can form connections with the right people quickly and get the right people on side. So you have to be, if that's the model that somebody chooses for your community, you have to be, you have to know what they're going to be doing and be looking for these things so that you can be throwing sand in those gears.
A couple of the residents and that guy, this fella,
Abatoy,
Mr. Frat Boy, like he looks like a frat boy and I don't mean that in a good way. Anyway,
he looks like a KA. I mean, the KAs were the white racist.
Oh God! Oh my God! Yeah, that's right. So he has. There are a couple of owners in his little community who have espoused, family voting. In other words, only the man. We've talked about this in the show before. Only the man in the family, the head of the family, so to speak, is allowed to vote. Each family gets one vote, and so on and so forth. They've talked about wildly extremist views, and his take is, well, that's these guys are they're not what we're all about exactly. Except they're kind of handpicking their tenants, right? They're handpicking who moves in. So of course that's exactly what they're all about. And I think that, the interesting thing about this is the right wing and white Christian nationalists always talk about invasions, right? The brown people are invading, the feminists are invading, busloads of Antifa are invading, right? George Soros is sending, bombers full of Antifa
and paying all of us, all the time to be who we are,
Yeah, but it's projection. It's always projection because this is literally an invasion. This is, let's establish a beachhead where a community can build a big stake where eventually we can populate enough and get loud enough that we have real impact on local community policy and politics. And the policy and politics comes from people who say shit like this, right? So I think the other thing that, and I'd love to get your comment on this, but the other thing is, let's say brown people do invade, right? Let's say, yes, there's a huge influx of non-white people. The question I always come back to is why and how, right? The why of any sort of immigration in that context is a personal journey to find work, to support your family. The purpose and product of this invasion that we are talking about today is to coerce you into having 1 million babies and removing all of your rights. Right? They are not the same kind of thing. So I want to know, we're going to show a video in a second, but I want to know where we go and what is the current status of all of this, because it is still happening.
Well, the title of my newsletter today is Christian Nationalism, Making the U.S. One Battleground After Another. And they're targeting places all over the United States with this, especially in rural areas. But in the piece, I even get to how they've used a top-down and bottom-up approach in Florida, to take over governments at the local level and then push down Christian nationalist things from the governor's office at the state level. So they have multiple tactics that they can use to do this. And so it's really important to understand this isn't new. This is a version of company towns.
Yeah.
From, the 1700s, 1800s, where you worked somewhere and your employer provided you a place to live, but you had to abide by the employer's rules to have your place to live and to stay in the company town and keep your job. But we can go back even further than that. This is a version of lord and serf, where, the property owner, the lord, the noble person got a grant of land from the monarch, and then the serfs could live on the land and work the land at the master's leisure. This is a plantation model also, where, you get a place to live as long as you follow the rules. And don't think, suppose somebody moves into this Christian nationalist community in Tennessee and has an epiphany and decides, I really just don't want to live this way anymore because it's bunk and I'm going to live the way I want to live now. Don't think that you're going to be able to stay in that community and keep your property. There are going to be things built into buying into a community like this. That means you forfeit your property if you don't follow the rules. That's always going to exist in these things. So it's a version of stuff we've seen throughout history, just packaged as something else, trying to be packaged as something new. And it's not new.
No. And, we also have the look, it's not just white people. I mean, it's not just black people. It's not just non-Christians. Mm-hmm. Return to the Land in Arkansas is a settlement that bars black people and Jews and it's now facing a federal fair housing suit. But they're going to persist.
Right. And it's another model that these people can use, which is why I highlighted it. They're trying to say that this is just a private club. And so it's exempt from, Title II of the Civil Rights Act. They can form a private association. That's what they're trying to say. So if they're successful with this, then white Christian nationalists will use this one as well. So that's why I included it. You have to be on the lookout for those kinds of groups coming into your area and trying to form some kind of exclusive private club.
And look, I'm always hesitant to use clickbait kind of stuff, but they're coming for you. Mm-hmm. Right? They are coming for you. And that is the whole point. They are coming for you. They don't like you. And they don't like what you believe. And they don't like what you do. And they don't like how you run your family. And for some reason, it is all appalling to them. And they want to be able to decide. We want to decide for ourselves. They don't want that. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to impose anything over them except to remove their ability to control us. Mm-hmm. That's it. It is a backwards kind of thing. And I want to switch gears just a little bit and go back all the way to 2012. Okay. Because
which feels like such a quaint other time.
It really does. Yeah. I only had one child. I was young and I didn't have this gray yet. It was wonderful. So in 2012, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, Dan Cathy, opposed same-sex marriage, and said, when asked about it, he was like, guilty as charged. I oppose it. And he warned that the nation is inviting God's judgment, which is something we hear a lot on this show. So there was a boycott, and you took part in that boycott. But you got a lot of flack for it from
Mhm.
from at least your Christian nationalist side of your
Oh no,
family.
from all quarters I got flack.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, in 2012, I was not political or I mean, I didn't talk about politics or religion.
Yeah.
You know, I had been involved in the Republican Party because I had been a Christian nationalist. I quit all that. I didn't want to have anything to do with any of that. I didn't want to relive it. I didn't want to debate it. I didn't want to have, you know. So I saw this happening on Facebook where, you know, the head of Chick-fil-A said this, and you know, I loved a Chick-fil-A chicken biscuit and would go out of my way. I'm not a morning person, and I would get up earlier than normal to go by there on my way to work sometimes to get these biscuits because I loved them. I don't like the sandwich, but I loved the biscuit. So, you know, I was sad because I was going to lose something that I really enjoyed. It was an indulgence that I would allow myself occasionally.
Yeah.
But, you know, I saw all these people on Facebook, you know, the LGBTQ community went to Chick-fil-A's in their area and picketed and screamed at people and, you know, dressed in drag and made out in front of people sitting in line while they were waiting to get their waffle fries and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I understand the impulse to do things like that. But having come from a Christian nationalist background, I was in groups who were doing that going, please don't do that because you're just radicalizing them more. You know, the worst thing to do is get in their faces and lecture them and parade your life in front of them and try to, you know, force them to accept something they will never accept. They're just going to get more radicalized by this. Please don't do that. You know, I'm boycotting. I'm never eating a Chick-fil-A chicken biscuit again, which all my white Christian nationalist people were like, well, you're an asshole and we hate you. But then the LGBT community were also like, well, you're not being an ally because you're telling us not to be ourselves, which was not what I mean, I was clumsily trying to, you know, just say, if you keep doing this, it's going to radicalize these people and it's going to have a bad outcome someday. And we're seeing that now.
Yeah.
You know, and so, and I was just a pariah everywhere and quit talking on Facebook for a while because anytime I raised my head, somebody was mad at me from one side or the other. But, you know, there's value in looking back at that story because, you know, we can't force people to accept things they refuse to accept. And that's what we're going through as a society now. You can't force Christian nationalists to accept things they believe their Bibles say are wrong. And we've spent time trying to force them to do that. And this is the backlash to that. You know, it has further radicalized them. It has caused them to organize. It has caused them to say, we're going to take over the country and we're going to force you to accept things you don't want to accept and see how you like it. And, you know, so it's not a good system of governing either way. You know, we've got to come up with a different way than just beating each other with the same stick.
Yeah.
And doing that tug of war back and forth. And I mean, those answers are above my pay grade, but it was just such an eye-opening thing for me to go through, to be like, I'm trying to help and everybody hates me for trying to help.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've talked a lot about boycott on this show as well. And, you know, you're at one point, you were like, if you're still buying on Amazon, what are you even doing? You know, if you're supporting the oligarchs who want to ruin your life, then that is on you. And I think that all of this stuff needs to get called out, but we need to be really strategic about this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's like, we don't need them to like us or to agree with us. We just need them to not have power.
Right. And the only way out of this now is to take their power. And they're drunk on their power. So they're overstepping right, left, and center, which is good for us. But we have to take away their power.
So I want to just play this because it demonstrates what they are coming after, and then I want to talk more about just a couple of steps that we each can take to fight this. So watch this, and this is so dumb.
About how much money our government and our culture has spent on supporting the efforts of people who hate Christ, all while the church in America can't even afford a building.
So just to pause there, that is their vision, right? That the government shouldn't support anyone who hates Christ.
Right.
The government should only support those of you who love Christ. And Christ,
if you're not Dale Partridge, or aligned with Dale Partridge, then you hate Christ.
Yeah, let's watch just a little more.
Like I pay rent for our church in a golf clubhouse. I just go, our economy's tanking. The state offers we have tax breaks, but like I would love it if the state was going, no, we're going to give land to churches. We're going to give them a building fund. And I still think you can have a separation of church and state because you're not having powers. It's like we're supporting Christianity in this nation. Well, I mean,
so this is the play.
Yeah.
The government owes Christians and those who love Christians all the things. And everyone else can go fuck themselves. So what do we do?
Well, I have a lot of things in both my newsletter on Wednesday and Thursday that people can do. But the bottom line is you have to be involved at the local level in what's happening in your town or community. You can't be on the sidelines. You can't be checked out. Go to public meetings. Stand up and speak. Get involved. Go to committee meetings. File FOIA requests. Have somebody in your indivisible group or other community group who pulls business license applications and recent commercial property transactions to see who's applying to have businesses in your communities, who's applying to buy property. What's the story behind these groups? Because, you can stop a business license from being approved. You can stop development from being approved if you get involved and are loud enough. So, being involved, because local government officials can't avoid you like our national leaders and state leaders can. My husband was not ever a political official, but he was a public official. So we could never go anywhere in public where somebody wasn't standing at our table or coming up to him and interrupting what we were doing and going, I have to complain about what's happening and what the city's doing, blah, blah, blah. This is the life of these people. It's what they signed up for. So, make sure they know your name. Make sure they can't walk past you on the street without you going, hey, I saw you were doing this thing and this person, this group, this business is trying to start this initiative and I oppose it because, and we're going to show up and we're going to say these things at the next public opportunity. You can have a newsletter for your group that doesn't just go to your group, but highlights what's happening in your community on these matters, because newspapers aren't doing that kind of stuff anymore at a local level. You can have flyers. You can have public meetings of your group to educate people in your community about what's happening behind the scenes. And a lot of this stuff is dry and boring. But these they have capitalized on dry and boring. That's what Project 2025 was. It was almost 1,000 pages of dry and boring.
Exactly.
That we're not, so, you have to get into those spaces that are dry and boring and know what's happening so that you can push back on the ground in your local community first. Because that's where you can really make a difference.
And also it's where you not only can make a difference, but where you will be impacted very first, right? The impacts you feel on Facebook are just rage, right? the way that you live your life in a day-to-day manner, how you leave your house to go to the store, who you have to, seek help from at your town hall. All of that stuff impacts you day to day. So that's where you should really be getting involved. These laws
especially if you're in a rural area, if you're in a depressed area, if you're in a small town, if you're in a place that's lost a major business anchor in the past decade or so, you're more ripe for this kind of thing right now. So if you're in a big city right now, you're not as ripe for that. But in small communities, listeners anywhere, blue, red, doesn't matter.
Yep.
You could be a target for something like this. And so it's critical that you get involved in your communities and keep it from happening. It's a lot easier to keep it from happening than it is to fight it once it's happened or try to unravel it after it's happened.
I would also say that in those small towns and small communities, you are ripe for gaining power yourself.
Exactly. It's cheap to run for city council.
Super cheap
to run for school board.
And it's hard because you get yelled at by people like me and Andra walking down the street all day. But sign up for it because you're a bulwark against white Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
Well, Andra, this is always so enlightening. If you're not subscribed to Andra Watkins for such a time as this on Substack, what are you even doing? How are you living your life? I don't get it. You got to go over there and subscribe. Subscribe to Lincoln Square. Also, both you can subscribe for free. You can become a paid subscriber with added benefits and yada, yada, and all that stuff. But we love this community. So if you're not a part of it already, join. We need you. And also, I would love to hear, Andra, you get letters from your subscribers all the time, reporting from their own communities about the events that they're seeing. If anyone of you in this community of Unholy Ground has anything to report from your own community, send it to us, send it to Andra. We would love to read it and put together some maps and see and connect some dots. Let us be that resource. Everyone, thank you. Thank you, Andra.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you next week.